Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a presence in the house, watchful, patient, and unusually perceptive. A large German shepherd with deep, soulful eyes, he had grown from a spirited pup into a silent observer of the human world around him. He understood moods, read voices, and responded not just to commands, but to unspoken feelings. Amir had raised Shadow from the day he brought him home as a wedding gift to his wife, Sarah. In those early days, Shadow was inseparable from Amir. The dog would follow him from room to room, sleep beside his bed, and greet him at the door with uncontained joy. Amir, too, had once doted on the animal, taking him on long walks, sharing meals, even whispering secrets into his ears after long days. Shadow had listened, always, but things had changed. Over time, Amir grew distant. His footsteps became heavier, his tone clipped. He no longer called Shadow by name with warmth. The walks stopped. The smiles faded. Amir would come home late, smelling, different. And Shadow, ever the quiet sentinel, noticed everything. He began spending more time beside Sarah instead, resting his head on her lap as she sat alone on the couch, gently nudging her hand when she cried, and guarding her room at night when Amir was away. Then came the day everything shifted. The front door slammed, echoing through the house. The scent of unfamiliar perfume followed. Sarah, her belly swollen with the promise of new life, stood frozen in the hallway. Across from her, a woman with wild eyes and venom in her voice stood seething. Maya, the intruder, the mistress, Shadow, stood between them, muscles taut, gaze flickering from one woman to the other. Maya's voice rang out sharp. "Move, mutt!" But Shadow didn't. He took one slow step towards Sarah, placing himself firmly in front of her, head lowered, teeth slightly bared. A low growl rumbled from his throat. Sarah clutched her belly. Maya's hand moved behind her back. In that moment, the tension crackled like static in the air. No one spoke. No one moved. But Shadow remembered. He remembered the walks, the warmth, the betrayal. But the dog saw everything and remembered. Sarah had always believed in love, not the kind found in movies, but the steady, soul-deep love built on trust, small gestures, and quiet understanding. When she married Amir 3 years ago, she thought she had found exactly that. He had been charming, respectful, and attentive, with a smile that disarmed even the harshest critic. He made her laugh when she was anxious, cooked for her when she was tired, and held her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And for a while, maybe she was. Their small home had once felt like a sanctuary. Mornings began with coffee and laughter, lazy breakfasts in the kitchen while the sun poured in through the curtains. Shadow would lay by their feet, tail thumping against the floor, soaking in the warmth that surrounded his humans. In those days, Amir used to touch her like she was fragile and precious. He'd brush her hair behind her ear and whisper, "You're my peace, Sarah." When she discovered she was pregnant, Sarah felt like the universe had answered every prayer she'd ever whispered. She had pressed the test into Amir's hands, breathless with joy, expecting tears, or at least a kiss. He had, smiled faintly. Not quite cold, but not warm either. She brushed it off, telling herself maybe he was just overwhelmed. Still, she threw herself into planning their new life. She decorated the nursery in soft pastels, choosing stuffed animals and framed lullabies. Every movement of the baby felt like magic, and she'd place Amir's hand on her belly during the night, whispering, "Did you feel that? Our baby's saying hello." He often mumbled something in return, distant, distracted. There were other changes too, subtle at first. Amir began working late more often. His phone always tilted away when she passed by. He no longer joined her for dinner most nights, and when he did, his eyes were elsewhere. Sarah noticed, but she didn't confront. She wasn't the type to accuse or demand. Instead, she tried harder. She cooked his favorite meals, left little love notes in his briefcase, bought a new dress for date night, though he canceled last minute. Even when the silences grew longer, when the warmth left his voice, Sarah held on. For the baby, for their history, for the man he used to be. One afternoon, she stood in front of the nursery mirror, holding a tiny yellow onesie to her belly, imagining the baby inside wearing it. Shadow sat nearby, his head tilted as if reading her thoughts. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Families go through phases." Shadow's tail thumped gently once, but his eyes remained fixed on the door, on the empty hallway where Amir no longer lingered. Sarah didn't know what had changed or why, but she believed love could heal, that if she just stayed patient, stayed kind, he would find his way back, because that's what perfect wives did. They stayed. Maya always got what she wanted, and what she wanted now, what she deserved, was Amir. She hadn't meant to fall for him. When they first met at a corporate dinner, she thought he was just another charming executive, harmless fun with a wedding ring she could pretend not to. See? But when his gaze lingered across the table, when he leaned in to laugh at her jokes and brushed his hand against hers as he passed her a drink, something changed. There was electricity, raw, unspoken. Maya thrived on moments like that. What began as flirtation soon became obsession. She told herself he was different. Unlike the others, Amir didn't just want her for the night. He needed her. The way his voice softened when he called her late at night, how he'd send her cryptic messages about how confused he felt, how empty his house had become. She read into it all, convinced that Sarah was the problem. Boring, predictable, safe. Maya saw herself as the antidote to everything Amir lacked in his life. She was bold, sensual, alive. He'd told her once, in a rare moment of honesty, that being with her felt like waking up from a long sleep. That was all Maya needed to hear. She wanted more. But Amir, despite his affection behind closed doors, kept Sarah at home and Maya in the shadows. He'd come to her in the dead of night, kiss her hungrily, but leave before sunrise. At first, Maya played along, telling herself it was only a matter of time. But time dragged on. And then came the news she hadn't expected. Sarah was pregnant. The word twisted in her brain like poison. Pregnant. Not with just anyone's baby, but his. That night, Maya broke a wine glass in her apartment and didn't clean it up for days. Her mind spiraled. This wasn't just a setback. This was war. She began learning about Sarah, not by asking, but by watching. She created fake social media profiles to follow her. She scoped out Amir's neighborhood, memorized the car Sarah drove, the times she left for appointments. She even followed her to the same grocery store once, staying 3 aisles away as she watched Sarah lovingly rub her belly while shopping for baby clothes. The sight made Maya's jaw tighten. "She walks like she owns him," Maya muttered, through gritted teeth. What Maya couldn't understand, refused to understand, was that she wasn't content being the secret. She didn't want Amir part-time. She wanted the house, the ring, the nursery. She wanted Shadow too. She wanted it all. But it wasn't just desire. It was control. Maya didn't love Amir in the way people wrote poems about. She loved the idea of being the woman worth destroying everything for. And if Sarah stood in the way of that, then Sarah had to be removed. She watched, learned, and waited. The days grew darker, her obsession deeper, and her patience thinner. Sarah wasn't naive. She may have been gentle, but she wasn't blind. Amir had changed. His eyes no longer lingered on her the way they used to. He rarely touched her anymore. No forehead kisses, no soft brushes of the hand, no resting his palm on her growing belly like he used to in the early weeks. He came home later than ever, sometimes not at all. His excuses were paper thin. Emergency meetings, project deadlines, just tired. He smiled less, and when he did, it never reached his eyes. Still, Sarah tried to believe in the best of him, Bear. "You okay?" she asked one night, as he absent-mindedly scrolled through his phone at the dinner table, barely touching the food she had made. He didn't look up. "Yeah, just tired, that's all." "You've been tired a lot lately," she said gently, her voice more hurt than accusing. "Is there something we should talk about?" Amir set the phone down just for a second. "Sarah, not this again. You're overthinking everything. You always do. She hesitated. "I feel like I'm losing you," he scoffed, shaking his head. "You're pregnant. Your hormones are all over the place. Stop stressing yourself out." Gaslight, deflect, dismiss. It was a pattern now. Every time she brought up her fears, he brushed them off with irritation or empty reassurances. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. She buried the anger because she still hoped he'd return to her, to them. But while Sarah clung to hope, Maya clung to fury. In another part of the city, Maya paced her apartment in a silk robe, staring at her phone as if she could will Amir into texting. Every time she saw a picture of Sarah still wearing her wedding ring, or worse, smiling, she felt something twist deep inside her. Why hadn't Amir ended it yet? Why was she still the one waiting? She confronted him over dinner at her place. "You said it was over between you two," Maya hissed, arms folded tightly across her chest. "She's still living in your house, Amir. She's carrying your baby. What exactly am I supposed to be to you? A hidden hobby?" Amir rubbed his forehead, exhausted. "It's complicated." "No," she snapped. "You're a coward." He stood, jaw tight. "Don't start with that again." Maya narrowed her eyes. "Then do something. Leave her, or I swear I will." It was a threat laced with desperation, and Amir felt it. But still, he didn't leave. He couldn't. Whether it was guilt, fear, or a flicker of love for the woman who still wore his ring, Amir stayed paralyzed between two worlds. One calm, one chaotic. And in the middle of it all, the cracks grew wider. At home, Shadow started behaving differently. Once deeply loyal to Amir, he now watched him with quiet suspicion. He lingered longer near Sarah, often placing himself between her and the door when Amir arrived home. He growled, low and warning, whenever Maya visited. The first time she entered the house while Amir was showering, Shadow blocked her path down the hallway, baring his teeth until she backed off. "I don't like that dog," Maya muttered to Amir, forcing a smile when Sarah passed by in the hallway. "He doesn't like you either," Sarah replied softly. Her tone unreadable. Maya's smile twitched. It was a subtle war now, between stares, between tones, between unspoken truths. Maya was unraveling, and Amir was spinning in circles, trapped in lies of his own making. And Sarah? She was no longer. Blind, she was watching, waiting, just like Shadow. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. The name haunted Maya like a splinter under skin. It bled into every thought, every moment. In Maya's eyes, she wasn't just Amir's wife. She was an obstacle, a parasite clinging to a man who deserved better, who deserved her. For weeks now, Maya had watched from the sidelines, seething in silence. No matter how many times Amir swore things would change, no matter how many nights he slipped into her bed only to vanish by dawn, Sarah remained. Maya had fantasized 1,000 versions of the perfect ending. Ones where Amir realized Maya was the woman of his dreams. Ones where Sarah left gracefully, understanding she had lost. But reality didn't bend for fantasy. Reality showed Sarah's growing belly. Reality showed Amir hesitating. Reality whispered, something Maya couldn't bear to admit. She might never leave, So if Sarah wouldn't walk away, she'd have to be pushed. It was a Thursday when the opportunity presented itself. Amir had left town for a business trip, an industry conference in Dubai. Maya had double-checked the itinerary, made sure there were no sudden changes. He wouldn't be back until Sunday. She waited until the second night he was gone before putting her plan into motion. Maya still had the spare key. Amir had given it to her months ago in a moment of foolish trust, and though he'd asked for it back during a rough patch, she had made a copy, just in case. Now she stood outside the house in the dark, gripping the cold metal between her fingers like a weapon. "This is your chance," her mind whispered. She's alone. She's vulnerable. This ends tonight. She slipped inside like a shadow, silent and careful. The house smelled of lavender and baby powder. It made her nauseous. A stuffed elephant peeked out of a nursery room doorway. She wanted to tear it apart. Then came the sound of claws clicking on hardwood. Shadow. The dog froze in the hallway, eyes sharp, ears up. For a brief moment, neither moved. "Hey, boy," Maya whispered, crouching. "Remember me? I brought you treats once." Shadow stared. He didn't growl. Not yet. She took a slow step forward, holding out a piece of meat from her coat pocket, laced with a light sedative, just enough to slow him down. To her surprise, he sniffed it, then turned his head away. Maya cursed under her breath. No matter. She moved past him and into the living room. Sarah was outside, watering the plants in the garden, her silhouette soft beneath the yellow glow of the porch light. A perfect little domestic scene. Maya knocked gently on the glass door. Sarah turned, startled, but didn't look afraid. "Maya?" she asked through the glass, confused. "What are you? How did you get in here?" Maya smiled sweetly, masking the venom in her voice. I wanted to talk. Woman to woman, I owe you that." Sarah hesitated. "You're here alone," Maya added quickly. "I didn't mean to scare you, just 5 minutes. Please." Sarah, always willing to believe in the good in people, opened the door. She didn't see the tension in Maya's shoulders. She didn't notice her eyes, dark and erratic. She only saw another woman, possibly hurt, possibly in pain. "Okay," she said softly. "Come on out. We can sit in the garden." Maya stepped outside. The air was thick with silence. Sarah lowered herself onto the garden bench, brushing her hand over her belly protectively. "What is it you want to say?" Maya didn't sit. She just stood there, watching her, eyes narrowing. "I want to say, I'm tired of pretending, tired of waiting." Sarah blinked. "Waiting for what?" "For you to get out of the way." Sarah's smile faltered. "Maya." "You think that baby ties him to you forever?" Maya hissed, stepping closer. "It doesn't. You're weak. You're boring. You're nothing like what he needs." Sarah stood now, slow and cautious. "You need to leave." Maya's hand moved to her coat pocket, where she had something else hidden. Sarah didn't see it, but Shadow did. He had followed quietly into the yard, head low, body tense. He saw Maya's sudden movement, the shift in energy. A growl rumbled in his throat. Maya turned to him, startled. "Stay!" she snapped, but Shadow didn't. He stepped in front of Sarah, teeth bared, eyes locked. The night, once still, now pulsed with danger, and Sarah finally understood. This wasn't just a visit. This was a plan, and she was the target. Shadow, attack! Maya's voice cut through the garden like a blade. Her finger pointed directly at Sarah, her eyes wild with fury. In that instant, everything froze. The cool night air turned thick with tension, the garden lights flickering above as if the house itself could feel the shift. Shadow stood still. His body was poised, ears twitching, teeth faintly bared. But his eyes weren't on Sarah. They were on Maya. "Maya!" Sarah gasped. one hand instinctively cradling her belly, the other reaching for the bench behind her to steady herself. "What are you doing?" "Shut up," Maya shouted, her voice cracking, under the weight of desperation. "He listens to me now. You're done. It's my turn, my life, my family." She snapped her fingers. "Shadow, do it!" But he didn't move. Instead, Shadow took a single step towards Sarah. Not to attack, but to guard. He planted himself in front of her, head lowered, his body a shield. His growl now deepened, but it was directed at Maya. "No! No!" Maya's voice broke. "He's supposed to listen to me." Sarah's heart pounded like a war drum in her chest. Her hands trembled. But she didn't back away. She couldn't. She looked down at the dog in disbelief, tears welling in her eyes. And then it hit her. Shadow remembered. He remembered the nights she had stayed up late, gently brushing his coat while talking to her unborn child. He remembered how she had fed him from her hand when Amir forgot. He remembered curling up at her feet while she softly hummed lullabies in the nursery. He remembered her kindness, her calm voice, the way she'd whispered "good boy" with genuine affection. He remembered what love felt like, and now, in the face of a threat, he had chosen his side. Maya's rage exploded. "You stupid mutt!" She grabbed the nearest object, a ceramic flower pot on the garden table, and hurled it at Shadow with full force. "Move!" she screamed. The pot shattered near Shadow's front paws, sending shards flying across the stone path. He flinched, but didn't retreat. Sarah instinctively staggered back, shielding her stomach with her arms. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. "Maya, stop this! You need help!" Sarah pleaded. "This isn't you! Don't tell me who I am!" Maya shrieked. "He was mine the moment he touched me! You were just the boring wife with swollen ankles and stupid lullabies." Shadow let out a warning bark that echoed through the yard. A light flicked on in a neighboring house. Maya stepped forward, hands clenched, her eyes gleaming with something unhinged. "If I can't have him, you don't get him either. No one does." Her hands went to her pocket again, but this time, Shadow didn't wait. With a powerful lunge, he leapt between Sarah and Maya, knocking Maya off balance. She fell back onto the garden path, landing hard with a cry of pain. Sarah screamed. Shadow growled, standing over Maya, teeth bared, not biting, not mauling, just holding, dominating, protecting. Maya writhed beneath him, her bravado crumbling into sobs. "Get off me!" she screamed, struggling. "You're just a dog! You're nothing!" But Shadow didn't budge until Sarah, with shaking hands and unsteady legs, called out, "Shadow! It's okay. Come here." His head turned instantly. And then, gently, almost respectfully, he stepped off Maya and trotted back to Sarah, pressing his head against her thigh. Sarah dropped to her knees, cradling him as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Her entire body shook, but she wrapped, her arms around Shadow like he was the only solid thing in the world. The silence that followed was eerie. Maya lay on the ground, hair wild, mascara smeared, her chest rising and falling in uneven bursts. She didn't speak again. She had no more power left to wield. Just then, the distant wail of sirens broke the stillness. A neighbor had called the police. Shadow turned his head slightly, ears perked, but stayed by Sarah's side. And in that moment, as the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls of the once peaceful home, it was clear who had been loyal all along. Sarah's breath hitched as she stared down at Maya, sprawled on the cold garden path, eyes still burning with madness. But something in that twisted glare made her instincts scream louder than ever. "This isn't over." Maya's fingers twitched near her coat again. There was something hidden there, something worse than a flower pot. Without waiting another second, Sarah turned and ran, barefoot, breathless, into the side gate of the house, which led into the wooded area behind the property. The small grove had once been a quiet retreat for Sarah during early pregnancy walks. Now it was her only chance to survive. "Maya, stop!" she cried, glancing over her shoulder. But Maya was already on her feet, fueled by rage and rejection. Her heels thudded against the stone as she followed, not caring that her dress tore against thorny bushes or that her hair clung to her sweat-soaked face. "You think you've won?" Maya bellowed into the darkness. "You think Amir's going to love you after this?" Sarah's only response was the sound of breaking branches and her frantic footsteps over the uneven ground. Her lungs burned. The cool night air did little to ease the heat rising in her chest. Her baby kicked as if sensing the danger, too. "Stay calm," she told herself. "For both of us." Behind them, Shadow bolted forward, no longer calm, no longer passive. His eyes locked on Maya's fleeing form. His stride was fast, calculated, like a soldier executing a mission. Sarah reached a clearing, heart pounding, but her ankle twisted slightly as she landed on a hidden rock. She cried out and fell against a tree for support. A second later, Maya burst through the branches. "There's nowhere left to run," she panted, stepping forward slowly. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You were never good enough. For him. You never deserved him." Sarah tried to stand, but her ankle wobbled beneath her, and that's when Shadow appeared between them, again. He stood tall, tail rigid, a low, guttural growl rising from his throat. Maya took a step forward. "Get out of the way, dog." Shadow didn't move. Another step. "Move!" He lunged, not to kill, but with just enough force to knock her down again. His teeth caught her forearm, leaving a sharp scratch, not deep but painful. She shrieked. Flailing backward, scrambling on the dirt and dead leaves. "You crazy animal!" she screamed, cradling her arm. But it was enough. She no longer charged. Her fear was real now. Shadow stood over Sarah, tail swishing, baring his teeth. And then, voices. From across the fence line, lights appeared. "What's going on over there?" One neighbor shouted. "I heard screaming! Call the police again!" Another yelled. Maya's head snapped toward the voices. Panic crept into her expression now. Not anger, not confidence, but fear. Her perfect plan was unraveling in front of her, thread by thread. "You ruined everything," she hissed at Sarah. "You don't even see it. Amir will never be the same after this." Sarah didn't respond. She couldn't. Her breath came in fast, shaky waves, but her eyes, sharp and steady, never left Maya's. Shadow stayed rooted to her side. Blue and red lights flickered again in the distance. The voices grew louder. Footsteps approached through the side yard. Maya, eyes wide with realization, took a slow step back. Then another. And like a ghost, she vanished back into the woods, just as police voices called out Sarah's name. Sarah collapsed into the grass, arms wrapped tightly around her belly. Shadow pressed against her side, nuzzling her gently. The tables had turned, and Maya had lost more than just a man. She had lost control, and she had underestimated the bond between a woman, her unborn child, and a dog who remembered everything. The flashing red and blue lights bathed the garden in urgency. Uniformed officers swarmed the backyard while neighbors murmured in hushed tones from their doorsteps and porches. An ambulance pulled into the driveway just as Sarah, pale and shaken, was gently helped toward it. Shadow walked beside her, refusing to leave her side. Maya, now disheveled and barefoot, stood near the back gate, arms crossed tightly, eyes darting between the officers. Her voice was shrill and panicked as she pointed at Sarah. "She attacked me! She's crazy! She trained that dog to come after me!" The officers exchanged looks, and you just happened to be in her backyard with a scratch on your arm. "In the middle of the night?" one asked flatly. Maya stammered. "Amir gave me a key. I was checking on things, and then she just snapped." Another officer approached with a tablet. "Actually," he said calmly, "we've reviewed the security footage from the backyard cameras. He turned the screen toward her. The video played. Maya entering with a key, whispering something to the dog, clear and undeniable audio of her saying, "Shadow attack!" Maya's face drained of color. "She tampered with that!" she shouted, desperate. "That's fake! She's framing me!" But no one was buying it anymore. Shadow stood calmly beside one of the officers, tail, still but alert. The officer gave him a small nod. "Looks like this dog just told us everything we needed to know," he said. At that moment, a sleek black car skidded to a stop out front. Amir jumped out, eyes wild with confusion and panic. He ran toward the scene, his tie askew, suitcase still in hand. "Sarah?" he gasped. What happened?" His gaze caught on Maya, her dirt-streaked face, her bleeding arm, her wild eyes. Then on Sarah, seated in the ambulance, her stomach cradled, a paramedic checking her vitals. "What did you do?" he whispered, walking toward Maya. Maya stepped forward, tears forming. "Emir, I only came to talk to her. She went crazy. The dog attacked me. But Amir shook his head. "I've heard enough," he said, voice cold. "I gave you too much power. I let you in, thinking you understood boundaries, but this, you could have killed her. You could have harmed my child." That last word made Maya wince. The police officer stepped in. "Ms. Maya Farouk, you are under arrest for attempted assault, trespassing, and endangerment. You have the right to remain silent." Maya screamed, tried to run, but was quickly restrained and cuffed. Sarah, from her spot in the ambulance, watched the scene unfold with tear-filled eyes. The baby was safe. She had been examined thoroughly. No signs of trauma. Just a racing heartbeat, like hers. Shadow sat at her feet inside the ambulance, panting softly. When Amir stepped into the vehicle, guilt etched across his face. Sarah didn't say a word. She simply turned away. He had seen the truth now, and thanks to the loyalty of one faithful dog, justice had finally come barking. 1 month later, the quiet hum of monitors and soft lullabies filled the maternity ward. A gentle breeze filtered through the hospital room window, bringing with it the scent of early spring. Sunlight spilled across the bed where Sarah lay, cradling her newborn daughter. She looked down at the tiny face nestled in her arms, pink cheeks, button nose, a small tuft of black hair. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the chaos that had once surrounded her entrance into the world. Sarah smiled. After everything, this moment, this life, was hers. Untouched by betrayal, unshaken by fear, Shadow lay curled beside the hospital bed, his head resting on his front paws, eyes watching every movement with quiet devotion. He hadn't left her side since that night. Not during the ambulance ride. Not during her medical checks. Not even now. The nurses had taken a liking to him, calling him her guardian angel in a furry coat. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Amir stepped in slowly, holding a bouquet of white lilies. His eyes were tired, guilt shadowing his features. He paused when he saw her, the baby, and Shadow watching him closely. "I heard, she's beautiful," he said softly. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She adjusted the baby's blanket, her touch gentle and focused. "I just wanted to say," Amir continued, "I'm sorry for everything. I made the worst choices a man could make. I let darkness into our home, and you paid the price." His voice cracked. "I'm ready to do anything to make it right." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes calm. "No," she said simply. Amir blinked. "What? You can't make it right, Amir. Some things don't get fixed with flowers and apologies." Her voice was steady. "I'm filing for divorce. I already spoke to a lawyer." Amir stepped back, stunned. "But we have a child." "Yes, I have a child," she interrupted. And she deserves to be raised in peace by someone who values love and loyalty over lies. She looked at Shadow, who let out a soft breath, as if in agreement. Amir didn't fight. He simply nodded, defeated. "If there's anything you need," Sarah offered a polite final nod. "We'll be fine." After he left, the room felt lighter. Sarah leaned back, letting her eyes close briefly. Not from exhaustion, but from release. This was her new beginning, one not defined by a man or a mistake, but by strength, healing, and hope. As her baby stirred softly, Shadow stood and moved closer to the crib, his watchful gaze never leaving them. Sarah smiled again. No longer a victim, no longer afraid. She was a mother, a survivor, and now, finally, free. In a gray-walled prison cell, Maya sat on the edge of her cot, staring blankly at the wall. The fire that once lit her eyes was long, gone, replaced by bitterness and the slow realization that no manipulation, no charm, could save her now. Her name had become tabloid poison. Amir no longer took her calls. No one did. Meanwhile, Amir himself had disappeared from the spotlight. The confident businessman had become a recluse, consumed by guilt. He sold the house, donated his shares in the company, and vanished into quiet obscurity, haunted by the choices that had almost cost 2 innocent lives. But far from the shadows of regret and cement walls, light bloomed. Sarah sat in her garden, now vibrant with color. Her daughter cooed in her lap, reaching tiny fingers toward a sunflower. The sky above was cloudless, the breeze warm with promise. She had moved into a modest home surrounded by nature, peace, and no memories of betrayal. Shadow lounged beside her, his ears flicking at the sounds of birds, but his gaze never strayed far from Sarah or the baby. His loyalty hadn't wavered. If anything, it had deepened. Sarah looked down at her child and smiled, a real, unburdened smile. This was not the life she once imagined. It was better. No lies, no cages of control, just love, safety, and a 4-legged protector who had once made an impossible choice and chosen her. As the baby giggled, Shadow gently rested his head on Sarah's foot, content, and in that golden stillness, one truth echoed loud and clear. Sometimes the heart that saves you doesn't speak, it barks.